Hulk can breathe underwater and talk to ghosts. The Hulk is already known for being incredibly durable, strong, and nearly impossible to kill. But at one point, Marvel briefly added another surprising ability to his arsenal, and that's breathing underwater. In The Incredible Hulk, issue 77, during a fight deep in the ocean, Hulk casually notes that his body had developed a special gland that allowed him to breathe underwater. Instead of needing air like a normal human, Hulk's body had apparently evolved to adapt to extreme environments, letting him to stay submerged for long periods without drowning. The explanation given in the comics was that Hulk's physiology is constantly mutating and adapting to survive whatever situation he finds himself in. If he needs to survive in space, underwater, or in extreme environments, his body can sometimes evolve temporary biological solutions. This meant Hulk could battle enemies beneath the ocean without worrying about oxygen, making him even more unstoppable in environments that would normally limit other heroes. Another strange ability appeared in The Incredible Hulk, issue 370, where Hulk demonstrated that he can see and interact with spirits and astral projections. In that issue, Hulk was able to perceive Doctor Strange's astral form, which exists on the astral plane. It's a spiritual dimension where matter is composed of ectoplasmic energy. Normally, only powerful mystics, psychics, or trained adepts can see beings who are projecting themselves into this ghostly realm. The story offered a strange psychological explanation for this ability. It suggested that Bruce Banner's subconscious fear of his abusive father returning as a ghost may have caused his mind to give Hulk the ability to detect spirits as an early warning system. Essentially, Hulk developed a supernatural awareness that allowed him to perceive ghosts and astral entities that ordinary people couldn't see. Wolverine Hot Claws, Night Vision, and he is a human lie detector. Wolverine is best known for his adamantium claws, powerful healing factor, and his brutal berserker rage. But those aren't the only abilities his mutation gives him. Logan's body enhances many of his natural senses and physical traits, making him far more than just a clawed brawler. Over the years, the comics have revealed several lesser-known abilities that make Wolverine function more like a highly evolved predator than a traditional superhero. One of those subtle abilities is Night Vision. Like many nocturnal hunters in the Animal Kingdom, Wolverine can see clearly in extremely low light conditions. This power allows him to move through darkness, spotting shapes and movement, even when the surroundings are nearly pitch black. Still, Wolverine rarely relies on this ability alone, often tracking enemies using even his sharper senses of smell and hearing. Those heightened senses also make Wolverine an incredibly effective human lie detector. By paying attention to tiny physiological changes like a shift in someone's heartbeat, the scent of nervous sweat, or a subtle change in tone of voice, Logan can often tell when someone is lying. His sense of smell is also precise that he once figured out Peter Parker was Spider-Man simply by recognizing his scent, even though he had never met Peter before. At one point, Marvel even experimented with giving Wolverine a much stranger power known as Hot Claws. After being revived in the 2019 storyline Return of Wolverine, Logan's healing factor was temporarily pushed beyond its normal limits. Whenever he entered a berserker rage, his adamantium claws would heat up until they glowed red hot, allowing him to not only cut through enemies but also burn anything he struck. The visual looked dramatic, but the ability didn't last long. When the X-Men line was rebooted later that year with House of X and Powers of X, the Hot Claws were quietly dropped, leaving them as one of the weirdest and shortest-lived upgrades in Wolverine's long history. Spider-Man has poison stingers that trigger paralysis and sometimes even death, and he can actually talk to spiders. Spider-Man is usually known for his classic powers: super strength, wall crawling, spider sense, and web slinging. But over the years, Marvel has occasionally experimented with some much stranger additions to Peter Parker's abilities. In the early 2000s, several storylines explored the idea that Spider-Man's mutation could evolve further, giving him powers that made him behave even more like an actual spider. One example appeared in the 2005 storyline, Spider-Man the Other. After being defeated by Morlun, Peter was left near death and underwent a strange transformation where his body essentially rebuilt itself inside a cocoon. When he emerged, Spider-Man had developed several new abilities, including venomous stingers hidden in his wrists. These blade-like spikes could extend during combat, delivering a powerful venom that caused instant paralysis in victims and, in extreme cases, could even be lethal. The power reflected the darker idea that Peter's spider side was becoming more dominant, pushing him closer to a true predatory creature. Around the same era, Spider-Man also briefly displayed another bizarre ability: communication with spiders and other insects. In the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 20, Peter suddenly realized he could mentally send signals to nearby spiders and even request their help. In one moment, he used the ability to gather several spiders together in order to help him locate and deal with a chicken bomb. The concept worked somewhat like Ant-Man's communication with ants, though Spider-Man's version was far less precise and more limited. Both of these powers, in their ended up being extremely short-lived. The Stingers gradually disappeared after the other storyline, and Marvel eventually reset many of Peter's temporary mutations following the One More Day storyline. Meanwhile, the spider communication ability was almost completely forgotten, so much so that in Doctor Strange, issue 390, Peter even asked Strange if he could magically gain the ability to talk to a spider, seemingly unaware that he had already done exactly that years earlier. Gambit could see the future. In the early 2000s, Marvel briefly experimented with giving Gambit a very unusual new ability, the power to see the future. This happened during the run of writer Chuck Austen on X-Men, starting with issue 157 in 2004. In their opening storyline, the X-Men were fighting a group of superpowered Chinese heroes when things went sideways. During the chaos, Rogue accidentally caused one of the enemy fighters to fire a weapon directly at Gambit. At the same moment, one of Gambit's own charged playing cards detonated in his face, leaving him temporarily blind. But the blindness came with an unexpected side effect. Not long after losing his sight, Gambit began experiencing strange visions, brief flashes of events before they happened. In one moment, he suddenly foresaw Sabretooth attacking the X-Mansion, a warning that allowed the team to prepare for the assault before it actually occurred. Gambit himself wasn't fully sure what was happening. He could no longer see the world normally, yet these sudden glimpses of the near future gave him a completely different kind of perception. Like many experimental powers in long-running superhero comics, the idea didn't last long. Gambit remained blind and precognitive for only 9 issues before the storyline was quietly wrapped up. When the X-Men writer Chris Claremont returned to the title after Austen's run, he quickly restored Gambit's vision. The mutant sage used her abilities to repair the damage, and Gambit went back to his classic power set. Daredevil has minor telepathic abilities. Daredevil is famous for his enhanced senses and his incredible radar sense, which allows him to perceive the world despite being blind. His hearing is so sensitive that he can detect heartbeats, letting him tell when someone is lying, and his senses of smell, touch, and taste are also far beyond human limits. Over the years, Marvel writers have explored many creative ways these abilities work, making Matt Murdock one of the most unique heroes in terms of perception and awareness. However, something many fans don't realize is that Daredevil has occasionally displayed minor telepathic abilities. These abilities were developed during his intense training with Stick. Stick and his fellow warriors had trained themselves to resist and interact with psychic forces, giving them a form of mental discipline that borders on telepathy. As part of Matt's training, Stick taught him techniques that allowed Daredevil to defend his mind against psychic attacks, and through this training, Daredevil also gained a limited ability to communicate mentally with telepaths, though not in the same way characters like Professor X or Jean Grey can. His abilities are more like heightened mental awareness rather than true telepathy. Still, the idea that Daredevil can briefly interact with psychic minds is a strange and rarely mentioned extension of his skill set. Venom can treat cancer. In the early 2000s, Marvel explored a surprising and emotional aspect of Eddie Brock's relationship with the Venom symbiote. In the storyline The Hunger, Eddie confesses to Peter that he is suffering from adrenal cancer and has only a few months left to live. This revelation adds a tragic layer to the character, explaining why the Venom symbiote had been desperately trying to reconnect with Peter earlier in the story. The symbiote had originally bonded with Peter before Eddie, and it believed Peter's healthier body would allow it to survive longer. However, Spider-Man ultimately tricked the symbiote into rebonding with Eddie, and something unexpected happens. Once reunited with its original host, the symbiote begins keeping Eddie's cancer under control. While it doesn't completely cure the disease, the alien organism essentially stabilizes Eddie's condition by constantly repairing the damage in his body. In a strange way, the symbiote acts almost like a living treatment, preventing the cancer from progressing while they remain bonded. This development leads Eddie to face a serious moral dilemma later in Marvel Knights Spider-Man issue 6. Realizing that the symbiote would likely survive him and eventually find another host anyway, Eddie decides to do something meaningful with it while he still can. He auctions off the symbiote for $100 million to a mobster, then donates the money to charity in an attempt to make some good come out of his troubled life. Deadpool is immune to mind control. Deadpool is famous for his healing factor, his constant jokes, and his completely unpredictable personality. But one of his strangest and lesser-known abilities is his resistance to mind control and telepathy. Unlike heroes who have special mental defenses or psychic powers, Deadpool's protection comes from something much more chaotic: his extremely unstable mind. Wade's brain is constantly being damaged and repaired because of his aggressive cancer that spread throughout his body during the experiments that gave him his healing factor. The healing factor keeps him alive, but it also means his brain cells are constantly constantly degrading and regenerating, leaving his thoughts in a state of permanent chaos. On top of that, Deadpool often displays multiple competing personalities in his head, each with its own voice and perspective. For telepaths trying to read his mind, this creates a confusion mess of thoughts that are almost impossible to navigate. Because of this mental chaos, powerful telepaths have struggled to control or even properly read Deadpool's mind. Over the years, characters like Professor X and Emma Frost have found his mind extremely difficult to probe. In some cases, attempting to sort through Wade's thoughts could even drive a telepath insane. As a result, his madness unintentionally functions as a kind of natural defense against psychic attacks, making him surprisingly resistant to mind control compared to many other heroes. Iron Man once had rocket roller skates. One of the strangest and most overlooked features of Iron Man's early armor was the inclusion of rocket-powered roller skates. This unusual gadget appeared in the early days of the character, and at the time, Tony Stark proudly presented the idea as a cutting-edge military innovation, even suggesting that soldiers could one day use rocket skates to move quickly across the battlefield. For a character known for advanced technology, the idea sounded impressive in theory, though it was also a little ridiculous. The roller skates were built directly into Iron Man's armor and powered by small rockets, allowing Tony to zip across the ground at high speeds. This was before many of the iconic features of the armor had fully developed, so the skates were meant to provide quick mobility when flight wasn't being used. Iron Man occasionally used them to move around during missions or demonstrations, and the concept was treated seriously in the early comics, with characters reacting as if it were a revolutionary invention. As the iron armor evolved and gained repulsor-powered flight and far more advanced propulsion system, the roller skates quickly became unnecessary. Flying was faster, more versatile, and far less awkward than skating across the ground in powered armor. Because of this, the feature gradually disappeared from the character's arsenal. Magneto can control minds with his magnetic personality. Magneto is the master of magnetism, capable of controlling metal, generating powerful force fields, and manipulating electromagnetic fields on a massive scale. However, in the early years of the X-Men comics, Marvel occasionally experimented with some strange extensions of his powers before they were fully defined. One of the oddest examples appeared in X-Men 18, where Magneto briefly displayed the ability to influence people's minds using his so-called magnetic personality. One of the oddest examples is where Magneto, in the story, he suggests that his powerful presence and magnetic attraction allow him to dominate the will of others, essentially giving him a form of mind control. The explanation was clearly more of a pun than a scientific idea, playing on the phrase magnetic personality. Unlike his usual powers, which are tied to magnetism and electromagnetic energy, this ability resembled telepathy, something already strongly associated with characters like Professor X. And obviously, later writers abandoned the concept, and Magneto's mind-controlling charisma was quietly forgotten as his powers became more clearly defined. Thor can speak and understand every language. As the god of thunder and protector of the Nine Realms, Thor often interacts with countless civilizations like humans, aliens, gods, and mystical beings. Considering that Earth alone has thousands of languages, the numbers spoken across the cosmos would be almost impossible to manage. Fortunately, Thor and other Asgardians possess a unique ability known as the Old Tongue. The Old Tongue is a mystical linguistic power that allows Thor to communicate with anyone regardless of what language they speak. When Thor talks, the listener automatically hears his words translated into their own native language, and Thor can likewise understand them perfectly. This ability works on humans, alien species, and even other mystical beings, making communication across different cultures and worlds effortless. Because Thor spends much of his time traveling between realms and battling cosmic threats, the Old Tongue is an incredibly practical ability. However, it's rarely highlighted compared to his more spectacular powers like summoning lightning, super strength, or wielding Mjolnir. As a result, many fans don't realize that Thor essentially carries a universal translator built into his very being, allowing him to speak to anyone in the universe without ever needing to learn the language. Captain Marvel has cosmic awareness. Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, has many impressive abilities thanks to her connection to cosmic energy, including super strength, flight, and energy projection. But she has also cosmic awareness. In the Marvel universe, cosmic awareness means being mentally attuned to the larger forces of the universe. Characters with this ability can sense the subtle balance of cosmic events, almost like feeling the rhythm of reality itself. Through this heightened perception, Carol can sometimes anticipate events before they happen. By reading the patterns patterns of energy and probability around her. This allows her to analyze situations extremely quickly, almost like running thousands of strategic simulations in her mind. Because of this, Captain Marvel can often predict an opponent's strategy, react faster than normal, and make split-second decisions and dramatically improve her chances in battle. In some cases, this awareness has even been portrayed as bordering on mind reading, since she can pick up on subtle cues in a person's thoughts or intentions. This power played a major role in the controversial Civil War II storyline. Carol's cosmic awareness made her deeply concerned about potential threats to Earth, which led her to trust the inhuman Ulysses. Believing his visions could help prevent disasters before they occurred, she supported the idea of arresting people before they committed crimes. Ironically, critics of the story often pointed out that if Carol truly possessed cosmic awareness, she might have foreseen the ethical and moral problems that came from relying on such predictions in the first place. Angel's blood has healing properties. In the early 2000s, Marvel introduced the concept of secondary mutations, where certain mutants developed additional powers beyond their original abilities. Some of the most famous examples include Beast, whose already unusual appearance evolved into a more feline form, and Emma Frost, who gained the ability to transform her body into organic diamond alongside her telepathy. Around the same time, Angel also manifested a surprising secondary mutation, though it's far less widely known. Angel discovered that his blood possessed powerful healing properties. If someone with the same blood type received his blood, it could rapidly heal injuries and potentially save lives. This ability made Angel's blood almost like a living cure, capable of restoring others in ways normal medicine couldn't. The revelation added an interesting layer to Warren's powers, since his abilities had traditionally been limited to flight thanks to his large feathered wings and enhanced physical attributes. What makes this power even more mysterious is that Marvel never fully explained whether Angel had always possessed this mutation or if it developed later. Another winged mutant, Icarus, had healing powers connected to his wings, which suggests that winged mutants might share similar biological traits. However, the comics intentionally kept the origins of Angel's healing blood somewhat vague. Doctor Strange is a martial arts master. While Doctor Strange is best known as the Sorcerer Supreme and master of the mystic arts, many fans forget that he is also a highly skilled martial artist. During his training in the mystical city of Kamartaj, Strange didn't just study spells and magical rituals. Under the guidance of allies like Wong and other mystical mentors, he also learned various forms of hand-to-hand combat. This training ensured that he could defend himself even in situations where magic was unavailable or ineffective. Although Strange usually prefers to solve problems with spells, he has occasionally demonstrated impressive fighting ability in the comics. In some stories, he has gone toe-to-toe with skilled combatants using nothing but martial arts techniques. This side of Doctor Strange is rarely emphasized because his magical abilities are far more dramatic and powerful.